Let's talk again of a leadership challenge. Are you part of that?
Nope. From time to time, I might challenge the government to rethink things, but the last thing I want to see is instability in the government.
This time, a challenge was looming not from Tony Abbott, but from a member of Turnbull's own front bench, Peter Dutton.
Look, right from the start, I never harboured animosity toward Malcolm at all. This was never sort of a Rudd-Gillard, Abbott-Turnbull type relationship. I did all I could to make sure that his prime ministership succeeded.
He is a member of our team. He has given me his absolute support.
This was a bad Monday for the Prime Minister. The polls were down again, and his own MPs were threatening to cross the floor to vote against his climate and energy policy.
Now, it is clear that in the absence of bipartisan support of the National Energy Guarantee, will not be able to pass the House of Representatives.
That night, Turnbull decided to try to preempt any leadership challenge by pulling a surprise spill himself at the regular party room meeting the next morning. Were you given a heads up on that morning, or were you surprised in the party room?
I was totally surprised in the party room. I couldn't believe it.
Malcolm takes his seat in amongst the colleagues rather than being up the front. The returning officer calls for nominations for the leadership. Please stand if you'd like to contest. Malcolm Turnbull, of course, immediately stands, and there's a long pause. Eventually, Peter Dutton stood equally.
Turnbull's ploy worked for the day. He prevailed over Peter Dutton by what might have been an unlucky 13 votes.
Have you been wounded, Prime Minister? Do you want to speak?
This was an overwhelming vote of support for the Prime Minister.
Did you consider putting your hand up?
Absolutely not. No.
Not even for a millisecond? You
No.
think I could put up my hand here?
No. Never entered my mind. In fact, that's the first time anyone's ever asked me that, to be honest. Just no.
So your immediate instinct was, I've got to lock in here behind the Prime Minister, no matter I think this is a crazy move?
Absolutely. I was his treasurer and a friend. This is my leader.
There you go.
And I'm ambitious for him.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks, ScoMo.
But elsewhere, support for Turnbull was in freefall, with a growing number of frontbenchers quitting the ministry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As I'm sure honourable members are aware, the Minister for Home Affairs has resigned from the ministry. I want to thank him for his service.
Can you guarantee you will not launch a leadership challenge before the next election?
Well, look, again, just in terms of colleagues, I'm very grateful for the support that they've provided.
And straight away, Peter Dutton started gathering forces for a second challenge that week. Malcolm Turnbull demanded to have 43 signatures on a piece of paper. Was that fair play?
That was my idea, and it was a good idea.
I now await a letter with the signatures of a majority of the party room.
Was it fair play, though?
Absolutely it was.
I've spent the morning with the Prime Minister and the evening with the Prime Minister, and I am 100% supportive of the Prime Minister.
These people apparently had the numbers. They just had a ballot on the Tuesday morning. It was one of the most amateur-hour operations I'd ever seen in my life. It was like killing a man with a garden stake on the footpath, trying to take out Malcolm Turnbull. I'd seen some very precise leadership challenges. This was one of the least precise.
But it wasn't a challenge. Malcolm Turnbull had brought it on.
Yes, he did. I think that was a mistake to have the vote on the Tuesday morning.
The Prime Ministership was falling down around Malcolm Turnbull, wasn't it?
Well, he'd asked the question and people were answering the question, and enough people were giving a very clear answer that this was a big challenge for him.
There's been an extraordinary spectacle of disunity, of division, of personal hatred.
We've got this spectacle, this disgrace. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
For Malcolm Turnbull, the hammer blow came when the triumvirate of Michaelia Cash, Mitch Fifield and Matthias Cormann resigned together.
With great sadness and a heavy heart, that we went to see the Prime Minister yesterday afternoon to advise him that he no longer enjoyed the support of a majority of members in the Liberal Party party room.
But the list of signatories against the Prime Minister was still shy of the required 43. And it was Thursday, the last sitting day, and MPs were soon to go home. Scott Morrison proposed this as a lifeline for Malcolm Turnbull.
Let everybody go home, go and face their electorates, feel the unhappiness at the instability, and let's regroup and come back here in a couple of weeks. So let's go home. And Christopher thought, that's an interesting idea. But Malcolm decided to see what happened by the following morning and said, if the signatures all came in, then he'd call the meeting. Now, I actually don't think he got the credit he deserved for doing that. That was an honourable thing to do.
And that Friday's dawn brought the 43rd signature. It belonged to Warren Ench, a great mate of Brendan Nelson, the former Liberal leader deposed by Malcolm Turnbull way back in 2008.
It was an incredible call to demand
Unbelievable.
to have those 43 names.
Arrogant, and 43. So I said, look, I'm going to do a deal with you. If you want my signature, I'm happy to give it to you, but it will only be number 43. Only 43. They were a little bit puzzled, but I said, it's not negotiable. You must come to me when you've got 42 signatures, and I'll give you 43. They did. And that's when I wrote for Brendan Nelson, because I thought if he wants to know who we are, let's remind him of his own treachery. And when it came out, I got a fabulous call from Brendan, and he was quite touched by it. He felt that, at least now people had an idea, Malcolm getting a bit of his own.
Faced with the signatures of a majority, Turnbull had no option but to allow a spill and step aside.
I will not stand as a candidate in the ballot.
In the first ballot, there were 3 names: Peter Dutton, Scott Morrison and Julie Bishop. The Deputy Liberal leader polled only 11 votes. So then there was a two-way contest.
Malcolm Turnbull just emerging from the room with Julie Bishop by his side, the outgoing Prime Minister and Deputy Liberal leader.
A ballot conducted in the party room for the leadership of the Liberal Party. The successful candidate was Scott Morrison, and he won this vote by 45 votes to 40 for Peter Dutton.
How did Scott Morrison come through and win?
I think he played it very well. Once that match had been lit.
Did you vote for him?
I did. I don't think that there was anyone else at the time who was capable of uniting us in a way that he did, somewhat unexpectedly, but he did. And I don't think anybody else in that circumstance could have done it.
They wanted to bring the government down. They wanted to bring my Prime Ministership down, and while the consequence is that I'm no longer PM, of course, instead of Mr Dutton being Prime Minister, we'll no doubt in due course we'll have Mr Morrison.
Malcolm could charm the socks off a beggar. Then they have the torturous bad, which is getting into that rut they all get into where they forget they're the Prime Minister, think they're the President, and then they think they're they're there to reign for life and will enter into no discussions. Then their coterie of friends become smaller and smaller and smaller. They listen too much to too few people, and they become paranoid, and then they become distracted, and then they become ineffectual. And that's what happened to Malcolm.
One thing you've got to say about Malcolm, and I don't mean this unkindly, I mean, he doesn't lack self-belief. It was just on this occasion he pulled the wrong rein. He used to have this saying, often wrong and never uncertain. Now, I wouldn't say he was often wrong, but he was sometimes wrong, but he was never uncertain.